record
对，所以你现在
OK
也可以 record。
可以，那我 record 我就先停了啊，recording. Okay, great. Well, welcome everybody. Today we're going to be talking about college admissions strategy and timeline. This webinar is recorded, so if you need to leave in the middle or have any questions, you can always come back and watch it again. Feel free to put any questions in the chat as we're going, or you can raise your hand and then I'll try to get to your questions. Today we don't have our VCA folks with us to help out with the comments and the questions, so bear with me if I don't see your question. I will try my best to get to everybody's questions. Let me go and share my screen. Okay. So last time we talked about the Common App and how to use that platform to apply to many different schools. Because it was also around the time that the Common App opened up for this application cycle. And then today we're kind of taking a step back to look at the overall strategy and timeline for high school starting freshman year. So if anybody's here who is not a senior, who is freshman, sophomore, junior, then you're definitely in the right place because we're going to be talking about not only the application season where it's only a few months, we're also going to be talking about the whole 4 years of high school and how to sort of plan for that. Okay, so first of all, just a quick introduction of who I am. My name is Jennifer. I came to the US when I was 9, so I kind of went through elementary school, college, high school, all in the US. And I went to Cornell for engineering, and I did interviewing for Cornell for more than 10 years. And I worked as a engineer at GE for 12 years. And since during that time, I was always helping students and application guidance. And then I went back to school and got my certificate for independent educational consultant from UC Irvine. So now I'm a member of the Independent Educational Consultants Association, which is just a professional membership organization that just holds up a high standard for everything we do.
Do you want to join the seminar?
Okay,
No?
I'm gonna just mute. Okay. So yeah, folks, if you're not talking, please just mute. And then, if you need to talk, you can unmute yourself. Okay. So I am just working by myself. I don't have any other associates or collaborators at the moment. So if you have any questions or need help with student essays, then it's all me because I get this question a lot. It's like, do you have other people you work with? So currently I don't do that. It's just a one-person show. Okay, so that's enough about me. Just a quick cartoon to get us started. A lot of times we feel like, oh, we still have a lot of time. It's only October 1st. And then really quickly, you might realize like your student might be, oh no, it's October 31st and I haven't started. So the reason we're doing this webinar is so that we're not in that situation. So we can try to plan ahead and get a plan in place, strategy in place, so that we're doing all the right things at the right times and not scrambling and procrastinating until the end. Okay. Okay, so I want to first start with just like why, right? Because I think a lot of students, this is something I hear a lot is parents care a lot more, or like parents are kind of worried about why the student is not preparing or why they're not doing the things that they need to be doing, and they kind of nag and try to get the students to do the right thing. But I think we kind of start a little bit earlier and back up and just really need to have that conversation and talk to your student and not necessarily assume that every student is automatically going to go to college, but really talk to them about what their goals are. Like, why do they need to go to college, right? Is there a specific career that they're interested in? Do they want to find out more about themselves? Do they want to figure out how they can serve the community? What are the reasons to go to college? Because if their reason for going to college is not clear, then they're not going to be motivated to do any of this stuff, right? So I think that's really the first thing I would advise any families to do, is to have conversations, maybe multiple conversations, throughout their middle school, high school years, and talk about what do they really want to do? Like, what makes them happy? What do they want to do? And if the answer really is that college is not the right answer, then we have to be prepared for that, right? If really the thing that they want to do is not a four-year college, if it's a trade or if it's art school, whatever it is, we have to be really honest with ourselves and honest with our students that, we don't need to be pushing towards a direction that they're not at all interested in. Okay. And then, so if you find out that, yes, like college is the right path, which, probably for most people it is, then the next question is, what is the right college? And it's not necessarily the college that has the best reviews or the best rankings or the best prestige, but let's think about what is really the right college for your child or for you if you are the student, right? What is the culture of the school? Are you going to like it there? Are you going to enjoy meeting people? Are you going to find your community of like-minded people when you're there? And then curriculum, obviously, that's why you're there. Is it going to offer the majors and the types of professors, the courses that you're interested in? Is it going to support you in the best way? And then finally, what are the students who are graduating from that college doing? Like, where do they go? Do they mostly go get a job? Do they mostly go to graduate school? And does that really align with what you want to do? You might not be sure what you might want to do, and that is another important thing to realize, right? If you're not really sure what you want to do, then you might need to go to a college that has a lot of different offerings, that is not just like a specific type of school, so that you can explore when you're in college and not have to transfer to a different school just to pursue the major that you find out that you like. Okay. The next one. So, this is kind of like a very abbreviated version of like looking for the right college list. But assuming that, now you want to go to college, that you have a list of colleges that you're interested in and that are right for you. Now let's talk about like what can get you in, right? I think this is maybe what a lot of people are interested in, is that what are colleges looking for? Like, what are the criteria that they're looking at? So I've kind of put this in a like order of foundation to added value, right? So foundation is really like everyone should have this. Like if you don't have the right courses, the grades, some colleges will want to look at your SAT or ACT scores. That's kind of like the first step that you need to have, right? Even if you had awesome extracurriculars or essays, whatever, if you don't have the grades and you don't have the scores, then it's going to be very hard to get in. So that's kind of the first thing that we need to be building. And that really starts freshman year, right? 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade. It's not like something you can really change once you're in 12th grade. And so assuming you have all of those things that are required for the college that you're looking at, then the next thing would be recommendation letters and extracurriculars. Extracurriculars can include clubs, leadership, volunteering, jobs, internships, summer activities, all the things that can go in there. So the way that they see this would be in the activity list in the Common Application or in any other kind of application. And a lot of colleges are also looking at either required or sometimes an optional resume that you would be submitting along with your application. And then some colleges will be looking at interview. Now it depends like how important it is for different colleges. It's not always the same. Sometimes it's really important, sometimes it's not that important. So I just kind of put it there as sort of like a light green color to indicate that it's not necessarily important for every college, and not every college offers it, right? And then the next level would be the essays. So you would have at least one large essay for most colleges. For the UCs, it's like 4 essays. And then some colleges will look at demonstrated interest as well. And this is especially true for early action, early decision types of admission, and we'll go into that in more detail in a little bit later. But demonstrated interest just means that you are visiting the college, you are on their mailing list, you may have reached out to admission counselor, maybe you went to college fair and talked to admission counselor. Then the college wants to know that you are actually genuinely interested in that college, and that could play a factor in your application decision. And then we'll talk about silver and gold hooks. I mean, these are kind of like, if you have it, you have it. If you don't, then you don't, so it's a little bit hard, really not for a very small number of students, I would say that it's important. Okay, so again, I'm gonna check the chat if there's any questions. Okay, no questions. Okay, I'm gonna keep going. Okay, so gold hooks, this is basically, any really special connections, you might have. This could be alumni relationships, high ticket donations. If you're like a kid of a celebrity or kids of professors or faculty, they get a big advantage. And then if there's like a special talent, like international level athletes or artists, so this will be something that colleges are like, we want this person because they're super special, and they want to show off that, like, how many Olympic athletes they have, this kind of thing. Silver hook is a little bit lower level, right? It's not quite as rare as the gold hooks. These are like, if you have a national level award, sports recruiting is a really big one, especially for Division 1, sometimes Division 2, 3 schools, but certainly for those sports that are looking for athletes that are very outstanding. If you have created a nonprofit company or product, right? This could be some students publishing any works, whether it's a book or like journal article, research project, and then geographic location could be something as well, because a lot of schools there want to say they have students from all 50 states, right? Or whatever, like weird countries, or how many countries they have. So if you're living in a very remote location, like Alaska or like South Dakota, North Dakota, a lot of those states that typically don't have a lot of students to begin with, for those geographic locations, there may be an advantage as well. Okay. Okay, so then let's talk about, assuming that we're like a normal person, okay? We don't have any of those like super special hooks that the colleges might be looking for. For a kind of normal student, high achieving, whatever, whatever level you are, and whatever level of college you're applying to, they're looking for these 5 I's, right? This is like the majority of students, what they're looking for. So first, like they want to know, what's your identity? Like, what is your background? And this will be coming out from your essays a lot of times. And what are your ideas, processes, and motivations? Like, what's your thought process? And this is really looking at like the maturity of the students as well. Inspirations, who do you like have been your mentors, right? What books have you read, or like what inspired you? Like what like academic or intellectual motivations do you have? And that's really thinking about aspirations and future goals as well. Interests, what are you interested in? Intellect, problem solving. So any of these, or maybe all of these, or some of these, you want to highlight in your essays, as well as in your recommendation letters that your teachers should be writing for you. And then these should also work well, or they should go together with your list of activities, right? You want them to tell a whole story about who you are, based on what other people are telling about you, what you're writing about yourself, and also with evidence from your resume or from your list of activities. And the reason that the colleges are really looking at this, not only at test scores and GPA, right? The reason they really care is that they want you to be successful in their school. They want the students that they admit to actually do well in their college. They don't want their students to come and then, have to change to a different college or don't like it there or can't finish. They want students that actually fit in that academic atmosphere, whether it's like their maturity or whether it's their major or the interests, right? They're looking for students that really fit that campus and that community. And college admission counselors are very good at this. They are very good at picking out the type of students that will do well in that school. And that's why many times like certain schools will get a reputation for a certain type of students. So it's kind of like you select the college, but the college also selecting you. And then later, then when you have, if you're not doing early decision, if you have multiple offers of admission, then you're also selecting the college again, right? So it's really kind of this matchmaking process. Okay, so I'm gonna take a pause there and then see if there's any quick questions. So we kind of covered just like colleges, why go to college, what college is looking for. And then the next section, we're kind of gonna go into the timeline, really starting from 9th grade all the way through 12th grade, all the different things that we should be doing or can be doing. And this is, of course, like very generic. Every student is going to be a little bit different, but this is kind of like a structure or framework that you can start thinking about. So we're not like, oh, now it's 12th grade and, I didn't do this stuff, right? So ideally, like this is a kind of like a roadmap for you to think about like, what can we be doing earlier on so that we're prepared for the application at 12th grade. Okay, let's check the chat. Okay, no questions. Okay, everyone's doing good. Cool. All right, so 9th grade. So this is like a transition to high school, right? Most high schools in the US like start in 9th grade. So they have middle school, 6, 7, 8, and then going to 9th grade is the first year in high school. So usually that's a pretty big jump in terms of academic rigorous, like how rigorous the academics are. Typically middle school, you're not a whole lot of homework, a lot of time for fun. High school is going to be a little different, like depending on the type of courses that the student is taking, there's going to be a lot more requirements for them to be independent and like manage their own time. Figure out what the different due dates are for the different classes. So that adjustment, I would highly recommend to pay attention to, right? Because many times middle school students are doing well, they're getting good grades, they're not really trying that hard. And then suddenly they go to high school, then you might actually see a dip in their grades. You might see their grades are suffering a little bit because they're adjusting to this new atmosphere at high school. So just be aware of that. 9th grade is a great time to think about what are your strengths and weaknesses. Not to say that, okay, we're weak in this, or let's not do it, but just be aware. Like if we're not really that good at writing, maybe it's good to get some tutoring, to get some help in that, right? Or maybe there's some like really strong things about like STEM or math or, whatever it is, then you might want to foster that. So sometimes in middle school, it's not really clear. And then in high school, it's good to explore some different classes. I try some different things and then discover like what those strengths and weaknesses are and also interests, like what they are. And that's why I also, begin extracurriculars, right? Don't just go to high school and go to classes and don't do any clubs, right? You'd want your student to try at least, I would say, 2 to 3 different extracurriculars. It doesn't mean that you have to commit to all of them, but clubs in high school are very open to students just coming for a couple meetings and trying it out. So don't be afraid to just go to a couple meetings and or try a sport, and even if it's not something that they think they're definitely going to continue for all 4 years, it's still good to just try it and then see, because you never know. Exploring academic interest, we talked about that. It's a good time to take some classes that are like very different, because in middle school sometimes there's not a whole lot of variety in classes to choose from, but in high school you have more opportunities to try some different classes. So if your school offers some interesting classes, then it's a great time to take them. And even if you're not sure if you like it, it's okay. You know, most schools will actually allow you to switch classes or drop classes during the first couple weeks of a semester. Volunteering is really important. I do think that volunteering helps students develop confidence, whether it's inside the school or whether it's just outside of the school in the community. It's a great way to get students to be able to talk to people that are not also students, right? That they would be talking to other adults, maybe children, you know, maybe people from different backgrounds. And that's really the reason to do some volunteering. It's not because we need to have X number of hours. And some schools have like a requirement that they have to have a number of volunteering hours. I mean, if you have that, then you have to do it, right? But the real reason to do volunteering is not because of the number of hours, but really is for the personal growth and like how to know how to communicate with other people, how to, you know, not be too shy with like different kinds of people. So ninth grade is a great time to get started with that. And then career discovery, job shadows, internships, right? So I would start those as early as possible, you know, ninth grade or even earlier. A lot of jobs will allow students to come in and just follow somebody around for one day. If you have like a bring your child to work day, sometimes they'll even have students come in that's as young as 9 or 10 years old, right? So they can go and just figure out, hey, this job is interesting, or no, like I hate this job, it's really boring. It's a great time to try some different things. And then just the last thing here, you know, might be important for a lot of families is to begin the scholarship search. I did do a scholarship webinar, which is on my YouTube. So if anybody has not seen that, I would highly recommend for you to watch it. It talks about just like all the different strategies of looking for scholarships. And one of the things I talk about there is to begin early and have a plan, right? So if you are interested in getting scholarships, then ninth grade is not too early to really start looking at what scholarships your student could be applying for. So now we move into the summer of ninth grade. So this is kind of the first official summer in high school. You know, you don't have to do anything like super special, but there are going to be pre-college programs that are offered towards ninth grade, 10th grade students. Many of those like more competitive or selective pre-college programs, they're not going to be available until like after the junior year. But for ninth grade and 10th grade, there will be some pre-college programs already. So that is also a great way to like try out what it's like to live on a college campus. Go for a week, maybe 2 weeks. And some of them can be pricey. Some of them are more affordable. So you can take a look and see like what's available, maybe something close by, you know, even you don't have to travel too far, then that's even better. Doing some more volunteering in the summer, you know, you have more time in the summer, more career discovery, and also pre-study for the next year, right? A lot of students now, they're taking heavy course loads, so sometimes they don't realize that, oh, I could actually pre-study rather than just study during the school year. So if there's a way that you can work in a plan or some hours during the summer to do reading, to do pre-studying, that's gonna just help you for the next year. Because grades for ninth grade, you know, if there's a dip in grades, that's still forgivable, right? Colleges will look at, oh yeah, this student, you know, had a few bad grades in ninth grade, but their grades went up in 10th and 11th grade. That is something that they want to see, right? That they want to see that the grades are improving. That's actually something that they're looking for. If your grades are really great in ninth grade and they actually go down in 10th grade and 11th grade, which does happen to a lot of students because many times they're taking more difficult classes in 10th and 11th grade, maybe AP classes, then you might see a dip in grades for 10th and 11th grade. So in order to prevent that from happening, my recommendation is to do some pre-studying, especially if you're going to be doing some honor classes or AP classes. Okay, I have a question here. My daughter wants to major in nursing. She's 15, going to 10th grade in the fall. Are you aware of any opportunity of nursing and all the times? Okay, yeah. I think that's a very specific question. I'm gonna get back to you on that one and regarding nursing and also specifically in Albany. So let me get back to you on that one. We'll just finish the presentation. Okay. Cool. Okay. All right. So we'll just talk a little bit about extracurriculars. What is an extracurricular? Why do we even do it? I mean, extracurriculars is a really great way to find out what you like. Like, if you already know you want to do something medical related, great. But just keep in mind, if you did not work in a hospital or did not volunteer in some kind of like healthcare facility, you might think that you really like medical, but maybe that's not true. Like you don't want to find out after you're already in medical school that you don't like it, right? You want to do that as early as you can. So you want to find out what you like, see the world, help others, expand your interests, and explore your career, right? So these are all reasons to do all kinds of career like exploration. Not only because, oh yeah, because I need to put it on my resume, right? Like see this picture here. It's like, oh, this person's here and she's just helping trying to get into college, right? So that's not the real reason. Extracurriculars are ways to really expand your horizons, meet different people, learn from different people, right? Because you're not only learning from parents, teachers, but you want to be able to learn from all kinds of different people who are in the world. They can teach you things, even if sometimes it's not an easy relationship. Maybe sometimes you have to navigate some conflicts. Those are all great learning opportunities. Okay, so now we're moving on to 10th grade. Okay, so it's always great, and when we talk about planning academic curriculum, it's always a good idea to lay out the 4 years of your academic plan, right? So don't just look at courses for 1 year and then another year, at the end of that year. It would be best to lay out what your 4-year plan is for all 4 years. And then what we're talking about here is kind of like tweaking it, right? So if you already have a plan for all 4 years, but after 9th grade, you find out, oh, actually, I don't really like this, or actually, I want to take this other course. Of course, you can change that, right? So you tweak that as you go. So definitely change it, every time you find out something about yourself, like at the end of 9th grade is a great time to change anything that may not be exactly what you want. Okay, curating extracurriculars. So this is kind of a little bit tricky, right? Because sometimes the students would like to do everything. They want to do everything, but we don't have time to do everything, right? Maybe everything is a lot of fun. There's friends doing it together, and that's wonderful. But the reality is that your time is limited, with school, with sleeping, right? Eating, all the normal activities. Extracurriculars should really be like icing on top. It should be on top of everything you're doing. So it's very difficult to be able to do many different extracurriculars. And if you're doing too many, then it's very hard to get into like a leadership position for one, or it's really hard to like really make one or two your kind of like special thing. So 10th grade would be a good time to start thinking about like, what are the top maybe 1 or 2, extracurriculars that you should be doing? It doesn't mean that you have to quit everything else, but maybe you can focus on a couple that are your main things. And then the other things, if it's fun, you can still do it once in a while, maybe just at a lower level. And this really depends on the capacity for students. Some students do everything and they're great at everything, that's fine if you're able to do that. But this will be a time to like really think about like what is realistic and what is like actually doable, right? And then 10th grade will be a good time if you haven't already done it to start some college visits. We talked about demonstrated interest. Some colleges do care, if you visited them. And it is important for students to visit the colleges in person. I really believe that. I mean, even though you can find out a lot of stuff from virtual tours or online tours, online like Zoom, kind of like info sessions, but there's nothing that really compares to just walking on the campus and talking to real life students and real life teachers. So if you can do it, definitely recommend doing that. Maybe start with some colleges that are close to home, even if they're colleges that your student is like not interested in, because I don't know about you, but like a lot of students are not interested in colleges that are too close to home, right? They want to go a little bit farther, which is fine. But you should tell your students like it's okay to visit some colleges that are close to home, because it kind of just opens the door. Like it's an opportunity to just start, and it's really easy. Then you know what it's like. Then when you go to a college that is farther away or something that you're really interested in, then you know more. Like you're just more prepared, and you know more like what kind of questions that you should be asking as well. Okay, just gonna check the chat. Okay, can you be more specific about course selection each year, like difficulty levels, honors, regular AP or non-AP? Well, yeah, so I mean, that is really going to depend on your school, and it's going to be depend on your students, right? If your student is like very high achieving, obviously, take as many difficult courses as you can, right? Honors, AP courses. Some schools don't have AP, some schools have IB, like the International Baccalaureate. Or they may have just no AP, like they may just have regular. Some schools will have like a dual enrollment where it's like a course in high school, but you get college credit. So it's really going to depend on the school, and it's going to depend on what your student is interested in. Obviously, some students will take like everything that's AP, and I don't know if that's really the best plan. Especially if, like you're not really interested in all those AP classes. You don't have to take all AP classes just to take all AP classes. Ideally, you want to take classes that are more difficult in the areas that you're best at, or the areas that you're most interested in for like college major or career. Then you want to sort of tailor your courses towards that. But not all students know what they're interested in, until they actually take the class. So it's kind of like a catch-22. But definitely I would not recommend taking too many difficult classes or jumping grades when your student is not ready. Because, if you're taking very difficult classes, but you're not getting the best grades, then that's also going to hurt the student's GPA. So there's like two ways to look at GPA, right? One is like a weighted GPA, and one is an unweighted GPA. Weighted GPA just means that the highest number, and every school does it a little bit differently, but okay, so non-weighted GPA, usually like an A is a 4, a B is a 3, C is a 2, a D is a 1, right? But a weighted GPA means that for A, you're getting 5, for B, you're getting 4. So you can actually get more than 4. So the highest unweighted, it would be like a 4.0 GPA. But for weighted, you can get like higher, maybe 4 point something between 4 and 5. So, if you want to have a higher GPA, that's great. You would have to take more AP classes to get like above a 4.0. But then many schools, like it will actually look at unweighted as well. So you want to make sure that your unweighted GPA and your weighted GPA are good. So hopefully that makes sense. But I think that's a good question, but I think it's a question again that's pretty specific to a student and what they can handle. How many AP courses minimal would you recommend to complete during the high school years? Right. I mean, again, I think it really depends on student, right? If your student like really struggles in school, maybe you don't need to take any AP, right? AP courses are courses that are at high or at a very high level. They're basically college level courses. The material that they're learning is college level, which is why when they take an AP exam, they get college credit. So if the AP exam, you can get a 5, 4, 3, 2, or 1. If to get a 5 or a 4, sometimes a 3, they will get college credit if they do very well in the AP course. So it's definitely not a requirement for students to take AP courses and get college credit in high school, because they're in high school, they're not in college, right? But if you're talking about a student who really wants to challenge themselves and go to those schools that are like top 10, top 20 schools, very highly selective schools, then yes, you're gonna have to take more AP courses to show that you can handle the level of courses that are similar to college courses. And you're gonna need to show that not only are you getting good GPAs, that you're getting your A's and B's in your classes, but you're also getting high scores on your AP exams. So it's not just the number of AP courses, but also how many AP courses you're getting like 4s and 5s on in your AP tests that happen. So I don't think there's necessarily like a minimum number. And I mean, some students take like 10 or more AP courses, right? And some students just take 1 or 2 or maybe 3, right? So it kind of just really depends on the student. So there's no minimum. Okay. Well, I keep going here. Think about sports recruiting. This may not apply to everybody, but sometimes we don't think about sports recruiting until a little bit later, like 10th or 12th grade, but 10th or 11th or 12th grade, but 10th grade will be a good time. If your student is in varsity sports or they're really good at some kind of sport, you might start thinking if the student could be a candidate for sports recruiting. Because that also, if the student really wants to do it, that could also simplify your application process a lot. Because if they do get recruited by a school that they want to go to, then it makes the application process like really fast and really, I wouldn't say simple, but it makes it like less about the application and more about the match between the student and the coach and the team. Okay. Cultivating teacher and counselor relationships. So this is something that sometimes you don't think about until 12th grade, because you're going to be asking your teachers for recommendation letters, and counselor letters are also required. So that's the one thing where the counselor, you can't choose. You can't choose which counselor to ask. Is whichever counselor is assigned to you. Whereas for teachers, you do have a choice. You can choose math teacher, English teacher, science teacher, you have more options, but counselors, you don't. So I would say, and it really depends too, like on the way that the school is set up. Sometimes the same counselor will follow the student from 9th grade through 12th grade. And that's kind of the best case scenario, so that the counselor really knows that student from like when they enter high school all the way through 12th grade. So they have the most chance to get to know the student and write an excellent letter for them. Some schools set it up so that the counselors are by grade. So you might have a different counselor for each grade, and that will require some more like different kinds of just like communication and collaboration. But if it's always a good idea to talk to a counselor. You don't have to talk to them like all the time, like not like every week or anything, but definitely like once a semester, at least once a semester, maybe twice a semester. It's good to stop by the counselor's office and just say, hey, these are the things I'm doing. These are the classes I'm interested in. This is how my classes are going. These are how my extracurriculars are going. This is what I'm thinking. And sometimes the counselors will have really good advice for the students as well. Job shadowing, externships, yeah, so we talked about this already for 9th grade, but continue to do that. For 10th grade, and depending on the age of the student, some workplaces will say like they have to be 15, they have to be 16. So as your student gets a little bit older and they're going to qualify, or they're going to be more eligible for different kinds of opportunities that comes up. So just keep in mind, like, what are the opportunities for job shadowing, internships? You might have more opportunities in 10th and 11th grade compared to in 9th grade. And then financial planning as well. So this will be the year to start thinking about your financial aid situation. Because for example, right now it's like 2025, right? So the students who are in 12th grade, or they're starting 12th grade right now, right? They're going to be looking at the tax returns from the year 2024. So the year 2024, that student was like, the beginning of that year was their second semester 10th grade. And then the end of that year, they were in like the first semester of their 11th grade year, right? So you have this calendar year where they're going to be looking at your tax returns. So, just like a heads up, right? Kind of like warning, if you want to look at your financial situation, that will be the year to like, that really matters, like for financial aid, okay? Summer, so again, pre-college programs, something to look at, of course, not required, but those are just like some things to think about. Maybe an internship or maybe a summer job if your student is old enough. Most places start hiring when they're 15 or 16. They might want to think about doing an SAT or an ACT diagnostic. Many students take the SAT, but sometimes a smaller percentage of people actually do better on the ACT. So, I would say don't automatically assume that you need to take the SAT, because it might be a good idea to take both as a practice and then see which one your student does better. So if your student happen to really prefer the ACT, then you can go that path rather than work really hard on the SAT and then switch to the ACT later. So 10th grade should be a good time to start thinking about that. And then pursuing any kind of other interests, competitions, reading, special project. Okay, so I'm gonna look at the chat. I think there's a couple more questions here. Oh, how many years of foreign language courses recommended as a freshman? I'm not able to get a spot in the Chinese class. Yeah, that's a great question. Typically, it really kind of depends on the college again, but many colleges, especially the more selective colleges, they're gonna want at least like 3 years of foreign language. 4 is obviously preferred. The reason is that they want students to know like how other cultures work, right? Because when you go to college, you're gonna be in a situation where there's gonna be people from everywhere, international students, or there's just people from all kinds of backgrounds. And studying a foreign language is not only because of the language, it's also because you want to have a more open mind, right? You want to like be able to understand other cultures and other like ways of thinking as well. So if your school is not giving you a spot, like if you're not able to get a spot in a Chinese class in your freshman year, I would say, don't worry too much about it. Try to get into some kind of foreign language 10th, 11th, 12th. Ideally you want to have that be a consecutive. You don't want to just like do one language 1 year and switch to a different language the second year. Colleges do want to see that you're in one language for like 3 years in a row, so if at all possible, I'd recommend getting into some kind of foreign language starting sophomore year. I know that the UCs also have a foreign language requirement. I think it's maybe 2 years. I forget exactly how many years it is. It's in another resource that I have, so I can look it up later for you, or you can look it up. But colleges will say that they would definitely want to see it at least 2 years, maybe 3 years as a option, and then 4 years is definitely like desired but not required. So I think you're gonna be okay if you have 3 years of foreign language. I think you'll be fine for pretty much like all the colleges. I mean, I would also consider if you have if they have a spot in a different language. I don't know if you'll be open to other languages, whether they have Spanish or German or Japanese or something else. If there's not a spot in a Chinese class, maybe there's a different language that you're interested in. And you might also want to do something, if possible, outside of school, right? Even if it's just like Duolingo, or maybe it's just learning a little bit on your own. It might be fun, to do that. So there's different ways to do that. You could also think about taking a class in a community college, or sometimes they have those short courses in a community college, like over the summer. And if you take a college course, then and you get credit for it, then that can also go on your transcript. So that's something you can talk to your high school counselor about. Okay, but don't worry too much if you don't get in at all, like for freshman year. I think as long as you're in sophomore year and 2 more years after that, like 3 years, then you should be okay. Okay, go to the next one. Okay, so let's kind of pause here and talk a little bit about recommendation letters. Kind of talk a little bit about it earlier, but most schools they'll require 2 letters. Usually we're getting teachers from 10th to 12th grade. Probably the most popular is teachers from 11th grade because they're the ones who are getting to know you the most in your most difficult classes. And then like if it's a teacher from 10th grade, sometimes by the time that you're asking them and you're already in 12th grade, they might already like forgot about like what you did, right? So 10th grade is okay. 11th grade is probably the most popular. 12th grade is also okay, but just keep in mind 12th grade teachers, they're only gonna know you for like a couple months, so they may not know you very well to be able to write a letter for you. Sometimes you have the same teacher from 11th and 12th grade, then in that case, that's totally fine. Or if you have a teacher that's the same teacher, maybe they're teaching you different classes, it's fine. From 10th to 11th grade, then that's also great, okay? But the reason we need to be thinking about it when we're in a 10th or 11th grade is that you don't want to just think about it when you're asking for the letter. You want to think about it when you're just in class, right? Because that's the time that you're making an impression, you're communicating with the teacher, you're showing them like what kind of student you are. So if you don't have all of that experience and communication and connection built up with the teacher, then it's going to be really hard to ask them for a letter. And even if they say yes, they may not necessarily write a great letter for you. So kind of keep that in mind as you're in class. Are you communicating well with the teacher? Not every teacher matches like personality. They don't necessarily match with every student. So you might consider, okay, this teacher might not be the best person, but do I have another teacher, right? Do I have a teacher that I really do well with, or something like that. So just keep in mind. Some schools will also accept an outside letter, so this would be like an optional 3rd letter. This could be like a coach, it could be a volunteer coordinator, maybe somebody from an organization that you're volunteering at or doing an internship at that's outside of the school. So that could also be really helpful just to give another perspective of who you are when you're not in class. Definitely schedule a time to talk to your teacher, right? Don't just email them and say, hey, can you write me a letter? Have a meeting and tell your teacher like why you want to go to college and what's your plan. And then that's going to really help the teacher write the best letter for you. I also have another presentation that's all about like how to ask teachers for recommendation letters. So it's kind of like a whole thing. But I'll just kind of briefly talk about it here. If you guys want to talk more or have questions about it, I can share that other presentation with you, or just I can answer any questions you might have. Okay, so you want to provide your teacher with a resume, list of activities, talk about your goals. Okay, so this is very important. And I will just pause and talk a little bit more about this because as nowadays, right, you have your grades, you have your test scores. That's kind of already, like we said, those are kind of the basics that you want, right? And then your essays, yes, nowadays a lot of people are using ChatGPT or like AI for their essays, or they can get help from their essays, right? So college is also aware of this, that the essays that they're reading might not 100% be the student's work, right? They may not be 100% reflection of what the student has done or is capable of, or their writing quality. So colleges really know this, and they're not like gonna just think that every essay is like 100% of the student's work. Okay, so what can you what's left, right? What's left is the teacher's recommendation. Like this is really something that you can't really do too much about as a student. There's very little control that a student or parents have over the teacher's recommendation letters, and that's why colleges actually put a lot of weight on it. They really care about what the teacher and the counselor is writing about you, because you can't really do much, right, to change that. So I mean, I'm not saying like you have to like do much to like for the teachers or anything, but I do want you to be aware that recommendation letters are very important. Like they're super important, and maybe now even more important than your essays. Okay, that I know it sounds kind of strange because I know a lot of students put so much work, so much effort into their essays, which is, great, and you should be doing that. But colleges will really care about your recommendation letters, and they will really listen to your teachers. So it's really important that we're communicating with our teachers to make sure that they're showing like who you really are in those letters, and they're personal, they're not just like copy pasting, because teachers are busy. They're writing letters for a lot of different students. They don't always have time to write like really detailed letters for every single student. So if you want the best letters from your teachers, then you need to also treat it as something that is really important to you. Because if you're just sending an email and just asking, like, sending a Google form or something like that, that's pretty much like what everybody is doing. So I don't know, unless your teacher already really likes you, then they may not necessarily be putting in their like 100% effort, right, into writing a letter for you. I mean, teachers are awesome, like they're so great. They do these things that are totally outside of their regular job, right? They're not being paid to write recommendation letters. This is totally outside of their regular job. So we really need to you need to really treat it as something that's really important to you. Otherwise, the teachers, like even though they're really awesome, like they may not necessarily be putting a lot of time into writing the best letters for you. Okay, so just be aware of that. Okay. Okay, so now 11th grade. Now this is probably the most important year in high school, the most difficult academics, and it's also the last year of grades that the colleges are really gonna see, right? Because when you're applying to colleges, it's like the fall of senior year. So your first semester senior year grades are pretty much not gonna be available. They're gonna be making a decision based on your grades from 9th, 10th, and 11th grade. And 11th grade being the most important because it's the closest, like most recent reflection of your academic level. And also in most cases, like it shows your highest level, right? Because you're taking the most difficult classes in your 11th grade year. Not counting your senior year, right? I mean, obviously you want to show that you're still taking challenging classes in senior year, but they're just not going to see your grades until like after all the decisions that already came out, right? So 11th grade year, definitely think about leadership opportunities, right? So we talked about trying different things in 9th grade for extracurriculars, and 10th grade kind of like curating those extracurriculars. So we're focusing our time on things that we really enjoy and really interested in. And then 9th grade, you want to be like showing leadership, right? So you want to be picking those things that you're like being a leader, or like doing something new, or being innovative, anything that's a little bit more like above the like I'm just a member of this club, right? In the fall of 11th grade, you're also going to have the official PSAT. You can certainly take it earlier. Some students take it in 10th grade, but the PSAT in 11th grade fall is where where it actually counts, right? So you only actually have one opportunity to take that PSAT, and then based on that score is how it's determined like whether you are qualified for national merit scholarships. Okay, so that could be important for some students. SAT, ACT prep, probably should start happening if not already. And then in the spring of 11th grade is when you probably should take SAT or ACT for the first time, right? If not already. So probably, earlier that's better, but if you haven't taken it already by spring of 11th grade, then I will say definitely take it, by that time. Before the end of school, you should be asking for teacher recommendations. They may not write it at that time, but it's good to let your teachers know before the summer, okay? And then begin essay preparation, spring, probably a good time to start thinking about it, building your college list. And then in the summer, really diving into all the preparation, right? Whether you're doing a special program or writing your essays, maybe you're taking the SAT or ACT for a second time. So that summer of junior year is usually pretty busy and also pretty critical, right? So you might be doing like a more selective summer program, but even if you're not, I would definitely say like try to get all of your essays, all of your supplementals, testing, like anything, as much done as possible by the end of summer of your junior year, so that you're not scrambling in senior year and like you're taking classes and you're also doing applications. You don't want to be stressed out doing that. Okay, so just a quick thing on the application essays. We talk about the essays, but there's different essays for different schools. But there is really just like one big essay, like the Common App or Coalition App, basically the same topics. And I do have another webinar like specifically for the essays, so I can share that link if you're interested. Basically, like it's one large essay, 650 words. We call it the personal statement, something about you, right? There's different prompts. And that one essay really can cover many schools. Like I think it's like 1,000 schools or more. So you don't have to write a different essay for every school. UCs though, the University of California systems, they will be in a different system. So you will choose 4 essays out of 8 prompts. So they have 8 different options for prompts, and you will choose 4. And each of them are 350 words. Okay, and then some schools will have supplemental essays. This is where you get into more work, because the more schools that you apply to, and if they do have supplemental essays, then you're gonna need to write them, right? So that's where we say, let's try not to apply to too many schools. I usually recommend anywhere between like 8 to 15 schools to really focus in on the schools that you're really interested in. Some students will apply to 20 schools, I think that's fine. But any more than that, like 25 or 30 schools, then it just really becomes not as sustainable. Excuse me. Okay, drink some water. Okay, so it's always a good idea to get your essays reviewed by a teacher. And you also want your teacher who is writing your recommendation letter or counselor who's writing your recommendation letter to review your essay, because they might give you some good recommendations for the essay, but your essay also will help them write your recommendation letter. Okay, so they will know how to work that recommendation letter in concert with your essay. Okay, so that was really important. Have a friend or a college student read it, or like if you're interested, like I'm also reviewing essays for free, so if you want to send me your essay, just get some quick comments, you can email me, you can send it to me. I will review them for at least like the people who are in my WeChat group. So I don't know if this website or this webinar gets posted online somewhere, then maybe people will email me, but that's okay. I'm happy to do that, to just like give us another opinion, right? I can say, hey, this is what I like about it, this is something that you might want to change, or so I'm happy to help out. If you want to send it to me, I think I'll share my email later. It's also on the first page, I think also the last page. So if you want to send me your essays, I'm happy to give you some advice. Okay. And it's also very important to use your unique voice and experiences, right? I think realistically, like I said earlier, a lot of students might be using AI or like some kind of ChatGPT to help them. That might not always be a bad thing. You might want to use AI for some brainstorming, or a lot of students will use like Grammarly to check the grammar. I mean, I think that's really fine, but you don't want to be like sounding like robotic, right? You don't want to be sounding like, oh, like using all these big words and then using like AI to write it just to make it sound good, but it's not going to sound like you, right? So it's really important that your personal voice comes through in those essays and it has personal experiences so that the college admission counselors are reading it. It's kind of like they're reading it and they're meeting you as a person because they can't meet you in person, unfortunately, but they want to try to know you. And the essay is really the way that you're introducing yourself to them, intellectually, creatively, and then you want to make that as memorable as you can and make a connection on a human level, right? So that's really the goal that you're trying to reach, is that you want the college admission counselor to get to know you, like the real you, the authentic you as a person. And it's, if you don't use your voice and you just want to try to like sound like fancy, then that's not gonna work. Okay, let's see how we're doing on time. Oh, we're a little bit running over, but I think this is almost the last slide. So I just want to share kind of like the different ways to apply. And you know, it's so confusing, I think, for a lot of parents. Like, it feels like always that there's new ways and new different application plans that are coming out. So I just want to kind of go through this with you so that we're clear, like what are the different options like when it comes to applying. Okay, I got a question here. Okay, if I started out as a freshman year as level 1 as a higher foreign language level 1, should I get the highest level and then stop, which will leave you with 3 or 4 years less language, or should I have a second language to finish the first one and get 4 years? Oh, okay. Yeah. So if you're actually starting on like level 2 as a freshman, then you don't actually need to start another language, okay? So like say you got to like an AP Chinese or like an AP Spanish by the time that you're in 11th grade, then that already counts for like 4 years because you already know that language. So you don't need to do another language. Okay, as long as you're getting to the highest level of a certain language, whether it's like 3 or 4 years, then I mean, ideally, you know, you'd want to get like a good score on the AP exam for that language. And say you got a 5 on like that AP score, like exam for that language, then you don't need to worry about taking another language. I mean, unless you want to, but in order to satisfy that requirement, an AP score that is like a 4 or a 5 on one foreign language, that will be satisfactory for that 3 to 4 years language requirement. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about early decision. So early decision is binding, which basically means if the colleges accept you, then you have to go. Like you kind of like there's no other option, right? So this has got to be like your first choice college. So if you have a college that's like, if I get into this college, I'm gonna be so happy. I don't care about any other college, then yeah, like it's a good idea to do early decision, okay? But if you're like, I'm not super sure, like if I got into this college, maybe I would regret it because I also wanted to go to this other college, right? Then that's probably not a good idea to do early decision, okay? So only do early decision if you know for sure that you'll be super happy in that school. I would say that you need to visit that school in person, okay, to make sure that you really are sure that you're going to be happy there. And also financially, because early decision, you're not going to have a chance to compare financial aid packages or scholarship packages. So you have to take whatever they give you, even if it's not really that affordable to you, that you can't say like, oh, it's not affordable, I can't go. Like, you know, early decision is very serious. Like when you apply early decision, you have to sign a paper and then your parents have to sign to say that like if you get in then you definitely are going, okay? So really it's a pretty strict like decision there, so I would treat it with a lot of respect. There is that early decision 1 and 2. Oops, see, I wrote it wrong here. Let me get out. I need to change this. Okay, this my mistake. January 1st, usually around early January. Early decision 2 is around early January. So this is for people who like, if the early decision 1, they didn't get in, they were rejected, or maybe they were deferred. They can early decision 2 a second school, usually a different school than, well, definitely a different school than whichever they did like ED1. Okay, so you might have a plan for like ED1 and ED2 schools. Not every school has ED1 and 2. Some schools only have ED. Some schools will have ED1 and 2. So you're gonna have to do some research to see which school might be a good fit for you for ED1, which might be a good fit for ED2. Of course, you don't have to do ED. You could just do regular, right? But you will find out your early decision 1 school around December 15th. So it gives you some time to decide if you're gonna do ED2, right? If you got in with ED1 December 15th, then you're done, right? You don't have to do anything. You're just going to that one school. But ED2 school, oh shoot, and I need to say in here, right? This is gonna be kind of like March, time frame around that time, okay? So then, you will find out like with that later, okay? Early action is non-binding, so you're applying early, but this is, sorry, I'll say here November 1st, okay? So the first one for early action, October 15th, and that's just pretty much, where did I? October 15th, sorry, wrong thing here. Okay, October 15th to November 1st. Actually, most of the early action schools are going to be November 1st. The only early action school that I know of that's October 15th is UNC, University of North Carolina. It just has an odd early time deadline, but sometimes that throws people off. So I just want to make sure that people realize that there is that earlier than usual early action. So this one is non-binding, which means that if they do accept you, you don't have to go, okay? But you do find out early, which is kind of nice. And then they sometimes will have better scholarships. They might have more, financial aid. Sometimes like just more opportunities, maybe like more possibilities for honors college. So you might want to do early action for the schools that have early action if you're ready to do that. Of course, like if you're still taking SATs or trying to get a higher score, you might want to wait until regular decision. But if all of your materials are ready to go, then early action is a great way because there's really no risk. Like if they accept you, you still don't have to go. So it's kind of nice to be able to find out early and then have something in your pocket. Restrictive early action is offered by some very highly selective schools. It's non-binding, which is nice, but the only difference here is that you can apply early action, but you can only apply early action to that one school, and then any other like state schools. Like for example, you can apply restrictive early action to both Stanford and like another Ivy, okay? They're saying that if you want to do like one restrictive early action for like a private school and plus like any other public school. So you could do like University of Michigan, you could do UNC, you can do any other early action schools that are state schools, just you can't do 2 private schools that are restrictive early action. So this is kind of weird. But if you're thinking that like, you really want to apply to that school and you really like that school, then restrictive early action, might be a good way to go. And really the reason to do early action, early decision, early action, or restrictive early action is that, especially for early decision, the admission rates are a little bit higher, right? So you do have a little bit more advantage to get into a college for early decision compared to regular. And that kind of depends on the college. Not every school has a higher admission rate for ED. You know, some schools, RD and ED are pretty much the same. So in those cases, maybe not that important. But for some schools, it does give you a slight advantage. So that's one reason why people will do ED and REA, right? The restrictive early action. But you know, like I don't really think that is really great for students because you really limit your opportunities, right? Like it's kind of all of these different things here are really advantageous for the colleges because they want to get as many students into their college earlier and have them commit and decide as possible. And it's not really giving the students as much options to choose from. So I would say, you know, if you're getting super confused about this stuff, don't worry too much about it. If you're strong academics, if you have strong extracurriculars and recommendation letters, if you're gonna get in through like early, then you're gonna get in through regular as well. Okay, so don't be afraid just to only do regular decision if all of this is just like way too confusing. And then on top of that, this I think 2024 was the first year that University of Chicago came out with this like super early like ED option just for their summer session students. So if you went to a summer session for University of Chicago, you might be invited to do this like special binding early action, which has like an October 15th deadline. And this would have a slightly higher admission rate for University of Chicago as well, because you have been to their summer session and they already kind of know you as a student. So that's just something to be aware of. I don't know if there will be more schools that are doing this, but it's kind of like an interesting new thing that like one school is doing. Oh, I did mention University of Michigan earlier, but I think this year is actually the first year that University of Michigan is having an ED, because most state colleges traditionally have had EA or early action plans, but I believe that this year is the first year that University of Michigan is offering an ED option, which is kind of rare for state colleges. So just to be aware of that. And then deadlines for University of California, University of Washington are a little bit different and a little bit earlier compared to most of the schools. So I just want to put that here just in case you're interested in those schools. And also they just have one plan. They just have, it's a non-binding regular decision plan. But it does have an earlier deadline compared to regular decision. So for most schools, regular decision, non-binding, those deadlines are going to be early January to February timeframe. Okay, I'm gonna take a look at the chat. Okay, my child took AP Chinese in 9th grade and scored well. Is the score still valid when she applies to college? Yes. Yeah, so any score that you have taken that's like in your high school 4 years, right? 9th grade through 12th grade, the colleges will accept that. So that is totally fine. I would say though, like in this case, like if your child took 9th grade AP Chinese and scored well, I would say that I would, you know, if it were me, like I would still challenge the student to take another language, because you still have like 3 years of high school. You know, I know that I said earlier that if you already had like an AP grade in one language, then you don't have to take anymore. But I would say that's like if you did it in like 10th or 11th grade, you know what I mean? But like if you already took AP Chinese, especially if your heritage is like Chinese, right? Then you know, like it would actually be better if you also took another foreign language, you know, whether it's like Spanish, French, German, you know, whatever is offered in your school, just to show that like you're able to communicate and learn about other cultures. Because like if you're ethnic Chinese and you speak Chinese at home, you know, it's like, yeah, it's like, you know, Chinese, you know, that's great. But colleges are also looking for students who are curious and like able to communicate with folks from other cultures. So you know, it's great that you have the AP score, but it doesn't necessarily show that like you're able to like really put yourself out there, right? Kind of put yourself in a more vulnerable position to learn a new language. So I would say that if your student is like in 10th or 11th or 12th grade, then I would still highly recommend taking another language for 2 or 3 years to satisfy that requirement. Okay, it was not really a requirement, but I'd say like it's kind of like a requirement. I would say it's like a strong recommendation. Okay. Decision date means a deadline for students to decide or whether to accept the offer or not. Yeah, that's a great question. So decision date that I'm showing here, decisions arrive, like whether it's December or March, that is the decision date that the college is gonna tell you, is gonna tell the student whether they got in or not. Okay, they don't have to decide until usually May 1st. May 1st is usually the decision date. For everything except for ED, right? So obviously ED, if they accept you, you don't even need to decide, like you're just going, okay? So in that case, like it's just they tell you, you got in, you go, that's it. But for everything else, whether it's like EA or regular, you don't have to decide until May 1st, which is nice, you know. So you might have a decision from early action that comes out in December or February, but you have all that time between February until May 1st to make a decision. And that's really nice because then you want to be able to find out from all the schools what are all the decisions, right? Assuming you didn't get into ED, of course, right? So assuming there's no ED, and you just have some early action, some regular, and then maybe some UC, maybe UW, right? Then you can get all these decisions, and then somewhere around like April timeframe, you're gonna do a lot of thinking, you know, gonna do some talking. You might talk to other students, you might visit the college again, right? You might ask any questions about financial aid or scholarship. Then by May 1st is when you make a decision. And then sometimes your student might be put on a wait list, right? So instead of getting a yes or a no answer, you might get your student is on a wait list. So if your student is on a wait list and that wait list school is a school that your student really wants to go to, then you might consider staying on that wait list, right? So you might actually accept, so you actually, this is what I would recommend, and this is what every college would recommend, is that you will decide on a school that has officially accepted you, right? So assume that you're going to that school, but at the same time, you may want to stay on the wait list for another school. And if that other school tells you, they're going to tell you sometime within that first week of May. So May 1st through May 10th is where they're going to tell you if there is a spot that opened up in waitlist. And this happens a lot, right? It's not a super high chance, but there definitely still is a chance that your student may be accepted through the waitlist. So if your student gets accepted through the waitlist and they decide to take that spot on the waitlist, then they will actually need to cancel the decision from that first school. Okay. Hopefully that answered your question. As an 8th grader, I recently earned 4 high school world language credits through this district's proficiency test, which allows me to waive the world language requirement. Will this decision have any impact on my future college admissions? That's a good question. I mean, that's awesome that you did that. I guess my question would be like, if it's is it your like ethnic language, you know, like is it a language that you speak at home? Because if it's not a language that you speak at home, then that's great. But if it is a language that you speak at home, then I will still recommend, you know, in high school to at least take like 2 years of like some kind of world language, just because like some schools, like they really want to see that on your transcript. Yeah, I mean, I would say like if it's a language that is not your home language, and then like you took an AP, that probably would more world language, that's fine. But if it is your home language, then I will still highly recommend taking 2 years, at least 2 years of world language in high school. Okay. She's been doing Latin since 7th grade. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I would say, you know, in that case, like if your student has been taking, so this is a different student, okay? Student's been taking Latin since 7th grade. And I would say like it's still a great idea to continue and take Latin in high school, right? Especially, I think this is the same student who's interested in medical or nursing. You know, a lot of like body parts, like a lot of medical terms like really relate to Latin. So I would highly recommend, you know, still taking Latin in high school and maybe doing, you know, all the way through AP if possible. So, okay. Any other questions? I think this is the last slide. Oh, so 12th grade. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we need to really go through this, but this is basically, you know, just like a timeline, applications, submitting applications. We already talked about that. And then spring is kind of like when you find out, right? So this is pretty self-explanatory. 12th grade is kind of like supposed to be more of a relaxing year, right? The first part of 12th grade, you're still submitting things, but the second semester of 12th grade, you're pretty much celebrating, you know, you're finding out where you got in. So that should pretty much be done. So, okay, so here is just my contact information. I actually don't have my email in here, so I'm gonna type my email in the chat. So you guys can also email me any questions, or if you have essays that you want me to read and give you some comments, I'm happy to do that. Okay, I'm gonna stop share now and then ask, like, you know, feel free to ask any questions. I can also stop the recording if you guys want to talk, and so you're not like on the recording. So I'm gonna stop the recording.